What if I told you that the strongest minds are completely empty? What if the secret to infinite power lies not in filling your mind with more thoughts, but in creating perfect stillness within? Right now, as you listen to these words, your mind is racing. Thoughts crash into each other like waves in a storm, plans for tomorrow, regrets from yesterday, the endless chatter that never stops. You believe this mental noise makes you intelligent. You think constant thinking equals productivity. You are wrong. The bamboo stands tall in the fiercest wind because it is hollow at its core. The strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire, then cooled to perfect stillness. Water cuts through the hardest rock, not through force, but through gentle persistence born from its fluid emptiness. Your mind, cluttered with 10,000 thoughts, possesses the power of scattered leaves in autumn wind. But your mind, emptied of mental debris, becomes like the mountain, immovable, observing all, disturbed by nothing. Most people fear emptiness. They fill every moment with noise, activity, stimulation. They mistake the buzzing of mental static for consciousness itself. They are like someone trying to see their reflection in turbulent water. The very act of stirring creates the cloudiness that prevents clear vision. But you can choose differently. You can choose the way of the empty cup, ready to receive whatever the universe pours into it. You can choose the way of the clear mirror, reflecting reality without distortion. You can choose the way of open space, allowing energy to flow through you instead of creating resistance. Think of your mind right now. How many thoughts are fighting for attention? How many thoughts are speaking at once inside your head? The dead judges, the dead plans, the dead worries, the dead remembers, the dead compares. Each thought believes it is the most important. Each mental pattern demands your complete attention. This is not consciousness. This is mental chaos disguised as awareness. True consciousness is like the sky. Clouds may pass through it, mention sensations, but the sky itself remains unchanged. The sky does not grasp at clouds. The sky does not push them away. The sky simply allows them to move through its infinite space. Your awareness is this sky, but you have forgotten. You identify with the clouds and believe you are the storm. Most people live their entire lives as prisoners of their own thinking. They wake up and immediately the mental machine starts running. What needs to be done today? What went wrong yesterday? What might happen tomorrow? The mind creates scenarios, replays conversations, rehearses future conflicts. It builds elaborate stories about reality and then mistakes these stories for truth itself. You check your phone before your feet touch the ground. You fill your mind with other people's thoughts, other people's problems, other people's energy. You consume information like a starving person consumes food, desperately, unconsciously, without discrimination. Your mind becomes a garbage dump of random thoughts, scattered attention, fragmented awareness. By noon you are exhausted not from physical work, but from the constant mental activity. You feel overwhelmed, not because your circumstances are impossible, but because your mind is like a computer with 1,000 programs running simultaneously. Each program demands processing power. Each thought requires energy. The system slows down, overheats, begins to malfunction. You try to solve this problem by adding more planning, more control, more mental effort. You believe the solution to mental chaos is better mental organization. This is like trying to calm turbulent water by stirring it more efficiently. The ancient masters understood a different approach. They discovered that true power comes not from controlling the mind, but from emptying it. Not from managing thoughts, but from creating space between thoughts. Not from filling consciousness with content, but from returning consciousness to its natural state of pure awareness. When you empty your mind, something extraordinary happens. The constant internal dialogue begins to fade. The mental static clears. The endless commentary about life stops, and life itself becomes visible. In this emptiness, you do not become unconscious. You become supremely conscious. You do not lose intelligence. You access intelligence beyond the limits of thinking. You do not become passive. You become powerfully present. The empty mind is like a perfect mirror. It reflects whatever appears before it with complete accuracy, but it does not hold on to the reflection. When the object moves away, the mirror returns to its natural clarity. It does not carry the image forward. It does not compare this reflection to previous reflections. It simply reflects what is present now. Your thoughts are like birds that land on the branches of your awareness. Most people become identified with each bird, following its movement, getting caught up in its song. But you can learn to be the tree itself, providing space for the birds without becoming attached to any particular one. When they fly away, you remain rooted, stable, present. This emptiness is not vacancy. It is fullness beyond measure. When your mind stops creating mental noise, you begin to hear the subtle sounds of life itself. The rhythm of your breath, the beating of your heart, the flow of energy through your body, the whisper of intuition, of wisdom that speaks in silence. Most people are so busy thinking about their breath that they forget to breathe consciously. They are so busy analyzing their emotions that they miss the message emotions carry. They are so busy planning their lives that they miss the life that is happening right now. But when you create space in your mind, you create space for direct experience. Instead of thinking about peace, you become peaceful. Instead of seeking love, you recognize the love that you are. Instead of pursuing happiness, you notice the contentment that exists in this moment when you stop running from it. The empty mind is not achieved through force. You cannot think your way to thoughtlessness. You cannot use mental effort to stop mental effort. This would be like trying to calm water by pressing down on its surface. Instead, you learn the art of observation. You learn to watch your thoughts without becoming them. You learn to notice mental patterns without feeding them with attention. You learn to create gaps between thoughts, and in these gaps, you taste the freedom that is your natural state. Sit quietly for a moment. Notice your breathing. Don't control it. Simply observe it. Air flowing in, air flowing out. The natural rhythm that has continued since your first breath, that will continue until your last. You are not creating this rhythm. It is happening through you. This is your first lesson in emptiness. You are not the doer of your breath. You are the space in which breathing occurs. You are not the thinker of your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thinking appears. Most people try to meditate by controlling their thoughts. They sit in silence and become frustrated when thoughts arise. They fight against mental activity like someone fighting against the wind. The more effort they make, the more turbulent their mind becomes. The way of emptiness is different. You sit quietly and allow thoughts to come and go like clouds across the sky. You do not engage with them. You do not judge them. You do not try to stop them. You simply observe them with the detached awareness of the mountain watching weather patterns. Some thoughts will try to pull you into mental stories. They will present themselves as urgent, important, requiring immediate attention. But you remain as the observer. You notice the thought, acknowledge its presence, and return your attention to the space between thoughts. In this space, something magical begins to happen. You start to realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the awareness in which emotions arise and dissolve. You are not your past or your future. You are the eternal present moment that contains all experience. This realization changes everything. When you no longer identify with the content of your mind, you are no longer controlled by mental patterns. When you recognize yourself as awareness itself, you become free from the limitations of thinking. The mind that was once your master becomes your servant. Thoughts arise when needed for practical purposes, then dissolve back into emptiness. You can think clearly when thinking is required, but you are no longer trapped in compulsive mental activity. You begin to move through life from a place of centered stillness rather than reactive urgency. You respond to situations from wisdom rather than reacting from mental programming. You speak from authenticity rather than from the accumulated opinions and beliefs that once defined your identity. People around you begin to notice a change. You seem calmer, more present, more at peace. Your words carry weight because they come from silence rather than mental noise. Your actions become more effective because they arise from clarity rather than confusion. You are learning the first great secret of the empty mind. When you stop trying to control life from your thoughts, life begins to flow through you with natural intelligence. When you stop forcing solutions from mental effort, solutions appear from the space of not knowing. This is not passivity. This is the highest form of activity minus action that arises from stillness, movement that comes from center, power that flows from emptiness. The river does not strain to reach the ocean. It follows the natural path, flowing around obstacles, adapting to the terrain, arriving at its destination through the principle of least resistance. When your mind becomes empty like the riverbed, the universe flows through you with the same effortless power. You begin to understand why the ancient master spoke of uye minus action through non-action. You realize why they taught that the soft overcomes the hard, the yielding conquers the rigid, the empty contains the full. Your life starts to feel different. Instead of pushing against reality, you move with it. Instead of fighting circumstances, you flow with them. Instead of forcing outcomes, you allow solutions to emerge from the intelligence of the present moment. But this transformation requires practice. The habit of mental busyness is strong. The addiction to thinking is deeply rooted. The fear of emptiness runs deep in the conditioned mind. Most people would rather suffer in familiar mental chaos than risk the unknown territory of inner silence. They choose the devil they know minus constant thinking over the angel they don't know, pure awareness. But you can make a different choice. You can choose to trust the emptiness. You can choose to rest in the space between thoughts. You can choose to return again and again to the stillness that is always available at the center of your being. Each time you make this choice, you strengthen your capacity for presence. Each time you return to emptiness, you weaken the hold of compulsive thinking. Each time you rest in awareness, you remember who you truly are beneath the layers of mental conditioning. The empty mind is not a destination you reach once and possess forever. It is a way of being. You cultivate moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. It is a practice of returning home to yourself whenever you notice you have been carried away by mental stories. And in this returning, you begin to taste the freedom that has always been your birthright. You begin to experience the peace that does not depend on external circumstances. You begin to access the wisdom that cannot be learned from books or teachers, but can only be known through direct experience of your own essential nature. This is the paradox of emptiness. By becoming nothing, you discover everything. By losing your false identity as the thinker, you find your true identity as awareness itself. By surrendering the illusion of mental control, you gain access to the infinite intelligence of the universe. This is the practice that changes everything. This is where knowing becomes being. Right now, someone cuts you off in traffic and instantly your body floods with anger. Your heart races, your jaw clenches, your mind creates a story about disrespectful drivers and the decline of common courtesy. Within seconds, you have become the anger. You are no longer choosing your response. The emotion is choosing for you. But what if there was space between the trigger and your reaction? What if you could witness the anger arising without becoming it? What if you could choose your response from a place of centered awareness rather than emotional automation? This is the difference between reaction and response. Reaction happens to you. Response comes through you. Most people spend their entire lives reacting. Something happens in their environment and they automatically produce a predictable emotional pattern. Like a vending machine, you put in the right combination of circumstances and out comes the same programmed response every time. Your boss speaks sharply to you, minus anger. Your partner doesn't text back immediately, minus anxiety. Someone disagrees with your opinion, defensiveness. Traffic moves slowly, minus frustration. The weather doesn't cooperate, minus irritation. You have become a slave to your automatic reactions. You believe these responses are natural, inevitable, just the way things are. But this is conditioning, not consciousness. This is programming, not presence. The warrior understands differently. The true warrior is not someone who fights external battles, but someone who has mastered the internal landscape. The warrior knows that the real battlefield is within, minus between unconscious reaction and conscious response. Watch a master martial artist. When attacked, they do not react with panic or aggression. They remain centered, observing the incoming energy, and respond with precise, appropriate action. They move from stillness, not from emotional turbulence. Their response comes from awareness, not from fear. This same mastery is available to you in every moment of your life. Between every stimulus and response, there exists a space. In that space lies your freedom. In that space lies your power. In that space lies your choice. But first, you must learn to find this space. And the key to finding this space is your breath. Your breath is the bridge between your conscious and unconscious mind. It is the one function of your body that operates automatically but can also be consciously controlled. When you bring awareness to your breathing, you step into the gap between trigger and reaction. Notice what happens when you become emotional. Your breathing becomes shallow, rapid, confined to the upper chest. The breath of reaction is tight, constricted, fearful. It feeds the emotional fire and keeps you trapped in automatic patterns. But you can change this in an instant when you feel the first surge of emotional reaction before it takes over your entire system. Return to your breath. Not the quick panic breathing of reactivity, but the slow conscious breathing of presence. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 6 counts. This simple pattern activates your body's relaxation response and creates space for conscious choice. In this space, you can observe what is happening without being consumed by it. You can feel the anger without becoming angry. You can notice the fear without being afraid. You can witness the sadness without drowning in sorrow. This is not suppression. You are not pushing emotions away or pretending they don't exist. You are changing your relationship to emotional energy. Instead of being overwhelmed by it, you are learning to work with it consciously. Think of emotions as weather patterns in the sky of your awareness. Storms may arise, but the sky itself is never damaged by the storm. Clouds may gather, but they do not stain the infinite blue. Rain may fall, but it does not diminish the space through which it moves. You are the sky. Emotions are the weather. When you remember this, you can experience any emotional state without losing your essential stability. Most people try to control their emotions by controlling external circumstances. They believe that if they can just arrange their life correctly, they will feel the way they want to feel. This is like trying to control the weather by rearranging the furniture in your house. The path of mastery works differently. You learn to remain centered regardless of external conditions. You develop the capacity to respond appropriately to whatever arises without losing your inner equilibrium. Someone speaks harshly to you. Instead of immediately defending yourself, you breathe. You create space. You observe your impulse to react defensively. You feel the contraction in your chest, the tightness in your throat, the urge to strike back. But you do not become these sensations. You remain as the observer of them. From this space of observation, you can choose how to respond. Maybe the situation requires firm boundaries. Maybe it calls for compassion. Maybe it asks for silence. Maybe it invites curiosity about what pain might be driving the other person's harsh words. Your response comes not from your wounded ego, but from your centered wisdom. It is appropriate to the situation rather than being driven by your internal emotional weather. This is the beginning of true freedom. When you are no longer controlled by automatic reactions, you become free to respond authentically to life as it actually is, rather than how your conditioning tells you it should be. But this freedom requires practice. The habit of reaction is deeply ingrained. The neural pathways of automatic response have been carved by thousands of repetitions. Changing these patterns requires patience, consistency, and compassion for yourself as you learn. Each time you catch yourself in the moment between trigger and reaction, you strengthen your capacity for conscious response. Each time you choose awareness over automation, you weaken the grip of unconscious patterns. Each time you breathe instead of react, you expand the space of your freedom. The second great secret of inner mastery is this: true power is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not need to prove itself. It simply is. Most people confuse force with power. They believe that strength means pushing harder, speaking louder, trying more intensely. They think power is about dominating others, controlling outcomes, imposing their will on reality. This is not power. This is struggle disguised as strength. This is effort masquerading as effectiveness. This is noise pretending to be authority. Real power moves like water. It finds the natural path. It flows around obstacles rather than forcing through them. It is persistent without being aggressive. It is determined without being desperate. Think of the most powerful forces in nature. The wind that shapes mountains over millennia. The river that carves canyons through solid rock. The seed that breaks through concrete to reach sunlight. None of these forces are loud or dramatic. They are simply consistent, patient, aligned with natural principles. Your true power operates the same way. It does not come from forcing your will upon the world. It comes from aligning yourself with the natural flow of life and allowing that flow to move through you. When you try to control everything, you exhaust yourself fighting against forces much larger than your individual will. When you learn to work with these forces, you access energy and intelligence beyond your personal limitations. The master archer does not force the arrow to the target. They align their body, focus their mind, feel the wind, sense the distance, and release with perfect timing. The arrow finds its mark not through force but through harmony with natural principles. Your life can operate the same way. Instead of forcing outcomes through mental effort and emotional strain, you can learn to align yourself with the deeper currents of existence and allow solutions to emerge naturally. This requires a fundamental shift in how you approach challenges. Instead of immediately trying to fix, control, or change what you don't like, you first create space around the situation. You breathe, you observe, you listen for what the situation might be trying to teach you. From this space of receptive awareness, appropriate action becomes clear. You may discover that what seemed like a problem was actually an opportunity. You may realize that what felt like an obstacle was actually guidance toward a better path. You may find that what appeared to require struggle can be resolved through simple presence and clarity. This is not passivity. This is the highest form of intelligent action. Instead of reacting from fear, confusion, or desire to control, you respond from wisdom, presence, and trust in the natural unfolding of life. The stillness that you cultivate in your mind becomes the foundation for this responsive way of being. When your internal environment is calm, you can perceive subtle information that gets lost in mental noise. When your emotional state is stable, you can access intuitive guidance that gets overwhelmed by reactive patterns. Think of a lake on a perfectly still morning. The surface is like glass, reflecting the sky with perfect clarity. Every detail is visible: the clouds, the trees along the shore, the flight of birds overhead. But when wind disturbs the surface, the reflection becomes fragmented, distorted, impossible to read clearly. Your mind is this lake. When it is still, it reflects reality with perfect accuracy. You can see situations clearly, understand people's motivations, sense the right timing for action. But when your mind is agitated by thoughts, emotions, and reactions, your perception becomes clouded and unreliable. Most people try to make important decisions while their mental lake is churning with waves of anxiety, desire, fear, or excitement. They wonder why their choices lead to complications and unintended consequences. They are trying to navigate by a distorted reflection. The path of mastery teaches you to cultivate inner stillness before taking action. You learn to wait for the mental waters to settle before making important choices. You develop the patience to sit with uncertainty rather than rushing toward premature solutions. In this stillness, a different kind of intelligence becomes available. Not the calculating intelligence of the analytical mind, but the intuitive intelligence that knows without thinking, sees without analyzing, understands without reasoning. This intelligence operates beyond the limitations of mental knowledge. It can synthesize complex information instantly, perceive patterns that escape logical analysis, and sense solutions that have not yet been conceptualized by the thinking mind. You have experienced this intelligence many times, though you may not have recognized it as such. The sudden insight that solves a problem you have been struggling with for months. The feeling that guides you to avoid a dangerous situation. The certainty that tells you whether someone is trustworthy. The creative inspiration that arrives fully formed. This is not mysterious or supernatural. This is your natural capacity for direct knowing, which becomes accessible when you stop drowning it out with mental noise. The empty mind is not vacant. It is receptive. It is open to information that comes through channels other than thinking. It is available to guidance that emerges from the intelligence of life itself. When you learn to rest in this receptive emptiness, you begin to experience life as a collaborative dance rather than a competitive struggle. Instead of forcing your agenda onto reality, you sense what reality is asking of you and respond accordingly. Your career stops feeling like something you have to figure out and control and starts feeling like something you are called to express. Your relationships stop being about getting your needs met and start being about discovering what wants to be created through your connection with others. Your challenges stop being obstacles to overcome and start being invitations to grow into your fuller potential. This shift happens naturally when you master the art of responding rather than reacting, when you learn to access quiet power rather than forcing solutions, when you cultivate receptive stillness rather than mental agitation. But there is one more level to this mastery. There is one more secret that transforms not just how you act, but how you exist in the world. The deepest teaching of the empty mind is this: the very sense of being a separate self who must struggle against life is itself an illusion created by mental activity. When the mind becomes truly still, the boundaries between self and world begin to dissolve. You start to experience yourself not as an isolated individual fighting for survival in a hostile universe, but as an expression of the same consciousness that animates all life. You begin to sense that the intelligence you are tapping into is not personal intelligence, but universal intelligence expressing itself through your particular form. This realization changes everything. When you no longer feel separate from life, you stop fighting against it. When you recognize yourself as an expression of universal consciousness, you stop trying to control outcomes from your limited perspective. When you understand that the same awareness that looks through your eyes looks through all eyes, you stop treating others as obstacles to your happiness. You begin to move through the world with the confidence of someone who knows they are supported by the entire universe. You make decisions with the wisdom of someone who has access to intelligence beyond their personal knowledge. You treat others with the compassion of someone who recognizes their essential unity with all beings. This is the ultimate paradox of emptiness. By releasing your grip on being someone special, you discover your true nature as the very awareness in which all experience arises. By letting go of your separate self, you find your universal self. By becoming nothing, you realize you are everything. And from this realization, a new way of living becomes possible, minus a way that we must now understand if this transformation is to become permanent rather than temporary, practical rather than merely philosophical. This is where everything changes. This is where you stop learning about transformation and start becoming it. How do you live as universal consciousness while paying bills, sitting in traffic, dealing with difficult people? How do you maintain inner stillness while your phone rings, deadlines approach and responsibilities demand attention? How do you stay connected to infinite awareness while living in a finite world? The answer lies not in escaping your human experience, but in transforming your relationship to it. Most people believe awakening means leaving ordinary life behind, minds retreating to mountains, sitting in caves, abandoning worldly concerns. This is a fundamental misunderstanding. True awakening means bringing the infinite into the finite, not escaping the finite for the infinite. You do not need to change your circumstances to access your essential nature. You need to change your perspective on your circumstances. You do not need to find a perfect environment for peace. You need to become the peace that exists independent of environment. Think about this. If your inner state depends on external conditions being just right, then you are still a prisoner. You have simply created a more comfortable prison. True freedom means discovering the unchanging awareness that remains stable regardless of what is happening around you. The empty mind is not something you achieve once and then possess forever. It is a way of being you return to moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. It is like tuning a musical instrument. You must do it regularly to maintain harmony. Your ordinary day becomes your practice ground. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to choose response over reaction. Every challenge becomes a chance to access quiet power instead of force. Every moment becomes an invitation to return to the stillness that is always available at your center. You wake up, and instead of immediately grabbing your phone, you lie still for 30 seconds and feel your breath. This simple act sets a different tone for your entire day. You begin from presence instead of mental activity. You start from center instead of scattering your attention in 10 directions. During your morning routine, you notice when your mind starts racing ahead to the day's tasks. You gently bring your attention back to what you are actually doing right now. Brushing your teeth becomes a meditation in presence. Drinking your coffee becomes a practice in mindfulness. Getting dressed becomes an opportunity to inhabit your body consciously. As you move through your day, you begin to notice the difference between necessary thinking and compulsive thinking. When you need to solve a problem, plan an activity, or make a decision, you engage your analytical mind purposefully and then release it when the task is complete. You learn to use thinking as a tool rather than being used by it. The rest of the time you practice resting in simple awareness. You notice sounds without labeling them. You observe your surroundings without creating stories about them. You feel sensations in your body without immediately trying to change them. You allow experience to be what it is without needing it to be different. This is not a passive state. This is the most alive state possible. When you are not lost in mental commentary about life, you can actually experience life directly. Colors become more vivid. Sounds become richer. Physical sensations become more nuanced. The present moment reveals layers of richness that get completely missed when you are preoccupied with thinking about what is happening instead of experiencing what is happening. People begin to notice something different about you. You seem more present in conversations. Your words carry more weight because they come from silence rather than mental chatter. You listen with your entire being instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. You respond to what people are actually saying instead of reacting to what you think they mean. In meetings, you remain calm while others become agitated. You speak when you have something valuable to contribute, not just to fill silence or prove your intelligence. You ask questions that get to the heart of issues because you are listening from stillness rather than from your own agenda. When conflicts arise, you do not immediately take sides or become defensive. You create space around the situation. You breathe, you observe the emotional energy without being swept away by it. From this centered space, you can often see solutions that remain invisible to people caught up in reactive patterns. Your work begins to feel different. Instead of forcing outcomes through mental effort and emotional strain, you align yourself with what wants to emerge naturally. You notice when you are pushing against the flow and learn to adjust your approach. You discover that many problems solve themselves when you stop interfering with them through excessive mental manipulation. Projects that once felt overwhelming become manageable when you approach them from presence rather than anxiety. You work with focused attention when action is required, then release your grip when action is complete. You stop carrying work stress home because you learn to leave each task complete in itself rather than mentally rehearsing it endlessly. But the real transformation shows up in your relationships. When you are no longer reactive, people cannot push your emotional buttons. When you respond from awareness rather than defensiveness, conversations that once escalated into arguments become opportunities for deeper understanding. You stop trying to change other people and start changing your reaction to other people. You realize that most interpersonal conflict comes not from what people do, but from your expectations about what they should do. When you release these expectations, you become free to respond appropriately to what is actually happening rather than fighting against your mental image of how things should be. Your partner does something that once would have triggered hours of resentment. Instead, you feel the initial flash of irritation, breathe through it, and choose your response consciously. Maybe the situation requires a direct conversation. Maybe it calls for compassion. Maybe it asks for boundary setting. Maybe it invites you to examine your own assumptions. Your response comes from wisdom rather than woundedness. It addresses the actual situation rather than trying to resolve old emotional patterns through current circumstances. The relationship becomes a place of growth and discovery rather than a battlefield of competing needs. With your children, you model calm presence instead of reactive anxiety. When they are upset, you remain centered, providing a stable container for their emotional storms rather than getting swept up in them. You respond to their behavior from understanding rather than reacting from your own triggered childhood patterns. This does not mean becoming passive or permissive. It means responding appropriately to what the situation actually requires rather than what your emotional patterns tell you it requires. Sometimes love looks like firm boundaries. Sometimes it looks like gentle acceptance. Sometimes it looks like playful engagement. Sometimes it looks like respectful silence. With friends and family members who drain your energy, you learn to maintain your center while remaining compassionate. You stop absorbing other people's emotional states as if they were your own. You can listen to someone's problems without making their problems your problems. You can care about their well-being without sacrificing your own peace. You begin to understand that helping others does not require losing yourself in their experience. In fact, the most helpful thing you can offer someone who is lost in emotional turbulence is your own stability. When you remain centered, you provide a reference point for calm that they can attune to. This is true service, minus not rescuing people from their experiences, but holding space for them to find their own way through. Not solving their problems for them, but maintaining the kind of presence that reminds them of their own capacity for wisdom and resilience. Your health begins to improve as chronic stress patterns dissolve. When you stop living in constant mental activity, your nervous system has time to restore itself. When you stop carrying emotional tension in your body, physical symptoms that seemed unrelated to stress begin to resolve. You sleep better because you are not taking the day's mental activity into bed with you. You digest food more efficiently because you are not eating while preoccupied with thoughts. You have more energy because you are not constantly leaking vitality through scattered attention and reactive patterns. But perhaps the most profound change is in your relationship to difficulty itself. Things that once seemed like problems start to feel like opportunities. Challenges that once triggered resistance start to feel like invitations to grow. Situations that once caused suffering start to reveal their hidden gifts. You begin to trust the intelligence of your life circumstances. Instead of immediately judging experiences as good or bad, wanted or unwanted, you become curious about what each situation might be offering you. You start to sense that even difficult experiences are perfectly designed to help you develop qualities you did not know you needed. Loss teaches you about impermanence and non-attachment. Conflict teaches you about boundaries and communication. Failure teaches you about humility and perseverance. Illness teaches you about presence and priorities. Each experience becomes a teacher when you approach it from awareness rather than resistance. This does not mean becoming passive about improving your circumstances. It means approaching change from wisdom rather than from reactive dissatisfaction. You work to create positive conditions in your life, but you do not make your peace dependent on achieving specific outcomes. You set goals and work toward them, but you hold them lightly. You pursue your dreams with dedication, but without desperation. You engage fully with life while remaining unattached to results. This paradoxical approach actually makes you more effective, not less, because your actions come from clarity rather than from fear-based striving. The empty mind is not empty of caring, it is empty of the mental noise that prevents you from caring effectively. When you are not lost in stories about how things should be different, you can respond appropriately to how things actually are. When you are not consumed by your own emotional reactions, you have energy available for creative solutions. You discover that the universe has been trying to flow through you all along, but your mental resistance was blocking the flow. When you stop trying to control the river, you become the riverbed through which it moves naturally. When you stop forcing outcomes, you become available for outcomes you could never have imagined. Opportunities appear that align perfectly with your deepest values. People enter your life who share your vision and complement your abilities. Resources become available just when you need them. Synchronicities multiply as you attune to the subtle intelligence that orchestrates reality beyond the level of mental planning. This is not magic. This is alignment. When you stop working against the grain of existence, you start working with it. When you stop creating resistance through mental struggle, you become available for the natural flow of creative energy that moves through all life. Your days begin to feel spacious even when they are full of activity. Time seems to expand when you are present rather than contracted in mental preoccupation. You accomplish more while trying less. You solve problems faster because you are not creating additional problems through reactive thinking. You become someone who others naturally turn to for guidance, not because you have all the answers, but because you have learned to rest in the space where answers arise naturally. You become a source of calm in chaotic environments, not through effort but through your willingness to remain centered when everyone else is scattered. This transformation is available to you right now. Not next week when your circumstances improve, not next year when you have more time, not when you finally figure everything out. Right now, in this moment, with whatever is present in your experience. The empty mind is not a future achievement, it is a present possibility. Every breath is an opportunity to return to stillness. Every situation is a chance to choose response over reaction. Every moment is an invitation to remember who you are beneath the layers of mental conditioning. You are not broken and in need of fixing. You are not lacking and in need of acquiring. You are whole and complete exactly as you are. The peace you seek is not hidden somewhere outside you waiting to be found. It is the very ground of your being, temporarily obscured by mental activity but never actually lost. When you empty your mind, you do not lose yourself, you find yourself. When you release mental control, you do not become powerless. You access power beyond the limitations of thinking. When you surrender to the present moment, you do not give up your dreams. You align with the intelligence that can fulfill your dreams in ways your mind could never conceive. This is the ultimate paradox, the final teaching, the complete understanding. You are simultaneously the emptiness through which all experience flows and the fullness of all experience itself. You are the space in which life happens and you are life happening. You are the awareness that observes everything, and you are everything that is observed. When you truly understand this, when you live from this understanding, when you embody this truth completely, there is nothing left to seek, nothing left to achieve, nothing left to achieve, nothing left to become. There is only this moment, this breath, this perfect expression of infinite consciousness appearing as your unique and precious human experience. The universe is flowing through you right now. The question is not whether this is happening, not it is always happening. The question is whether you will allow it consciously or resist it unconsciously. The choice is yours, the power is yours, the freedom is yours. The empty mind awaits your return home.